I have 4 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any public comment this morning or this evening?
Just a quick one. Cindy Van Tassen. I just wanted to review the question I had last week and the answer that we got from Kelsey, which was very nice that she answered. And my question was how many waivers the Mid-American had secured for the solar project. And she said that there have been no waivers secured from any of the neighbors. So in my thinking, that means that they have not done a lot of work in trying to secure any waivers or work with the neighbors to get those, or work with the neighbors to get any waivers. And I just wanted to point that out, that if the project was valuable, then maybe there would be more work done on it to grant those, to get those waivers secured. Thank you.
I believe Cindy, if you listen to what she said, she had more qualifications on the waivers and why they didn't do it.
This is okay. Thank you.
Any more comments?
Kelsey Ballard, Mid-American. I will talk about the solar project later,
Okay.
but had a couple of public comments on the data center item. I'm not a data center expert by any means, but I have spent a lot of time reviewing Page County's zoning ordinances. So just a couple of things to consider when you get to that agenda item. First of all, the zoning ordinance in Page County does have specific qualifications for what can be built in commercial and industrial zoning. And so I would point you to the regulations there that speak to noise, vibration, dust, heat and light emissions, air quality, waste management, and then the last one that I would consider kind of the visual maintenance and clean appearance. And so it looks like a moratorium is what's on the agenda, but I would say Mid-American has over 30 data centers in our current service territory. We've had them going back as many as 20 years. So certainly data centers were a thing when this ordinance was adopted. They can serve a lot of different functions. They can look a lot of different ways. And so, data centers that help with emergency management or servers on site in case of a failure to help restore, utility power or internet capabilities, or even, hospital systems with patient data. And so I think, a broad moratorium on something like a data center is something to carefully consider when you don't want to box out every single server or server room, like in the jail, for example. And then also just recognizing the length of time data centers have been around, and your ordinance seems to me would require a rezoning process, which has already boards appointed to go through that process, notice requirements, and in several cases, the Board of Adjustment could add additional provisions through a conditional use permit. That's conditions they could add. So like I said, not a data center expert by any means, but just as I was reviewing your existing ordinance for some of my comments later, just wanted to point out what exists there, and I would call it fairly robust in terms of commercial or industrial zoning. And then did just look at the zoning map, and it looks like right now there's a little bit of that commercial industrial right around Clarinda, Shenandoah, and Essex. And so the way I look at it, those would be the areas that something like a data center or a warehouse or something like that may be able to apply under your existing ordinance. And then anywhere else, it would seem to me they would have to go through the rezoning process, which I think, has a lot of process and regulation to that. So that's all for now. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Anyone else?
Jane Stimson. On the moratorium talk, yeah, I don't think it's something that you have to decide right today on whether you want a moratorium, but a moratorium is just an opportunity to research all the things, just like Kelsey mentioned, make wise research decisions on what you want and what you don't want. There does seem to be an all of a sudden surge on mega data centers, and they're being fought all over the country, and probably what people are against most are mega data centers that just take up tons and tons of acres. And so that's what I think you need a moratorium to understand what's going on and what you want to do, how you want to protect Page County. On another thing, I went back through the meeting last week, and the word collaborate was used many times on wanting to work with you for the solar project. And I was trying to figure out if going to the IUC to get the process waived, it would be called collaborating. The Mid-American went to the IUC and they were trying to get rid of all the process for collaborating or making it happen. And that doesn't seem like collaborating to me. Another thing said, we'll work with you for a balanced outcome. And I just get the vision of a scale that looks like this. So I'm hoping a balanced outcome means fair to the county and not just the people with money and power. And I'm just interested that there's a lot of electricity wanting to be made now. And when it started, the solar and wind were sold as clean, green, wonderful energy. How many decades ago? But it's like a science fiction thing to me. It's like the AI centers we all know AI has been around forever. I use spell check. That's AI. So all of a sudden, we've got to have so much more AI opportunity. And it looks like there's been a kind of, let's create a problem so that we can fix a problem and it'll help our bottom line. So I would just really encourage you to be wise in the decisions on the moratorium and on the solar ordinance.
Okay. And Daryl Wagner is in the back, and he just mentioned, do you want to talk, Daryl? Or you want me to just say what you wanted?
Go ahead and say it.
You've got a couple conflicting speed limit signs out there on your road that you would like taken care of because people are not abiding by those and they're going way too fast. So we need for the sheriff to be aware of that, and you got it. And the county engineer. Is that about it?
Yeah, I just talked to the sheriff.
Okay.
About it. He probably needs to do something when they're fixing this road. About those signs.
Okay. We'll pass that on to JD too. Okay. JD is not here tonight. First of all, any more public comment? Okay, we'll move on then. JD, our engineer, is not here tonight. He did give an update. It's basically just blades are out in the districts. They're hauling rock. They're working on the pipe crews, the spray patchers, the mowers. And then he's working on the FY 26 annual report. They've completed the GASB 34 reports. They're working on speed limit resolution where they're changing some from 55 to 60. And the J53 project continues with the base stabilization and the seal code. So things are working and they're moving forward. All right, our next item up is Sid Samuels from the Samuels Group. And Kurt, I don't want to butcher your name. Schleicher, okay. This is on a jail update. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, it was asked in regards to a financial update on the jail. So what I wanted to do was really take us back to where we started back in February of 25 to give you a reminder of where things were at the time, the plan and the strategy of what was taking place. And if you recall, if you look at the bottom there on that first page, we were at 17,456,000. We had anticipated roughly $615,000 in interest income, which left us a deficit of about $700,000. At that time, we talked about using other funds from some of your tax benefits that you'd had previously, if it was needed. So let's fast forward to today. And if you look at the second page, very similar. And what you will see is the accounting of the project, the additional interest income was added to funds available. So if you go to the bottom two lines, because I'm sure that's where you guys want to be, you'll see funds available. This is at the end of May. So we were not able to get the June stuff in here yet, but this is as of the end of May. You had funds available of $17,902,744. That included your interest income, that included the bonds. So if you recall, we passed the referendum at 16,000,007, invested those dollars, and from then to now had roughly $17,900,000 available to pay for the project. Because of those gains in the interest income, along with estimates that we had for gas lines, things like that, we were able to bring the project in as of May 31st, $17,887,000. So right now we're carrying a surplus there. The project still isn't completed, but we are carrying a surplus currently right now of $15,662. So there's been a substantial improvement from where we started back in February of 25. And so before we move on from that, I want to make sure you guys understand those numbers, exactly where we're at. Like I said, I think that's using the bond dollars to their fullest extent, investing those and being able to use that bond referendum to get exactly what we talked about versus having to use other funds. So I think it's a really good improvement. So do you have any questions on that portion of it?
So that 15,000 is just what we would have left in contingency,
What we would,
or is that we spent all the contingency?
we have not. So if you go up some line items there, you'll see a number of 24,163.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that's your remaining contingency fund. We do have some outstanding changes that we are still going through.
Okay.
But as of May 31st, that's what's in there. So you could essentially add the 15 to the contingency if you wanted to. You could do whatever you wanted. But when we're looking at the overall accounting of the project, we went through your general ledger. We were able to record all those interest gains. If you look at where we were 2 years ago to where we are today, you guys, that's a heck of a step forward. So
Yep.
I would be pretty happy with that team of people that, you know, watched your investments, watched over the project. Tony out there every single day, looking at ways, you know, using furniture, things like that. I mean, it was truly a team effort of people that at the end of the day is bringing this right in exactly where it was supposed to be. So compared to where we were in 25, That's a heck of an improvement. That's a 700, almost $800,000 improvement.
Yeah.
So I'd be very happy with that. So with me tonight too, if you don't have any additional questions on that, if you do, I'm more than happy to answer any of those there's a lot of numbers there. So I just want to make sure you understand what you are looking at there, and if you got questions on that, let us know. And if after the meetings you guys do have questions on it, just give us a call. We'd be more than happy to either come back and go through those, or if we got a specific question, be more than happy to answer those for you.
Awesome. Great, thank you.
Okay, the next thing I brought Kurt, I want to make sure he gets to be the star of the show, but so he's got his contingency log, he's got all of his change orders, that's all included in that packet. He can give you a quick overview of that. We won't put you through the painstaking process of going through every change order. But that information is all there for you. So you can look at every single one of them. And again, if you've got questions on those, he can either answer them for you this evening, or we can come back, or you can give us a call as well. So Kurt, why don't you come up here and I'll let you do that.
All right, next page is the contingency log. Sid referenced the 24,000 left in there on that sheet. That balance is right on the last page, 24,163.55. And the next spreadsheet, it's contingency log. We have two items that are pending, outstanding, and they're outstanding because we're in negotiations with those contractors because we feel their number is not accurate for materials provided. The next page, every subcontractor we have on the job site, what this is the main page where it tells us what the revised contract amount is, how many billings they had, when they were paid, and bottom part is your change orders. Your sheets after that is every one of these subcontractors, any change orders that were written, it is attached with all the signatures on each one. So every one of our subcontractors is listed here and has signed change orders for every change order that was issued. So I don't think you need to go through each one, but if you have any questions, just let us know. But yeah, well, most it's a recap sheet and every signed change order. I believe that was somebody was requesting that, and
Thank you.
everything should be here.
Great.
Okay. Any questions or further?
Oh, I appreciate that.
Looks like some are up and some are down, so it's
Yep.
good.
Yep.
Thanks,
All right,
Kurt.
thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank
Sid.
you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Okay. Our next item is to discuss action, resolution 2926, amend jail room and board fees, and we talked about this last week. We were also presented, well, we have resolution 29/2026. We can handle that first.
I'd make a motion that we approve resolution 29-2026.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. That increases the fee for, per day for an inmate of $80.
And this is, that's also going to the collection agreement, right? As well?
Yes.
Does that cover that?
I'm hoping so, because I got it in front of me.
So I put the collection agreement in there just so you can see what.
Okay,
Oh, okay, so.
so we're not,
You don't have.
That-
we don't have
we don't
to
have to
approve that.
approve that
Okay,
piece of it.
okay, that's good.
Just so you.
All right.
Okay.
Okay,
Yep.
so I'm gonna go ahead and use the 21st. And that sounds like a very good idea from last week to go ahead and I'll,
Oh, you do, okay.
Gotta give it,
I'll send you.
we gotta give that to Brian, yeah. To turn this, the unpaid bills over to collection. So that would be a good thing. Okay. Our next item is to discuss action for Page County Data Center moratorium. Todd is the one who is presenting this.
Yeah, and so really all this is just, again, I was glad you, Kelsey mentioned some stuff about our current zoning. This just gives us some opportunities to go look at that. Maybe we don't need an ordinance, maybe we're covered under our current zoning laws and regulations. But it allows us to at least get time to research, understand, what, because I don't know a lot about the data centers. It doesn't affect any current data centers that are already operating in the county. Obviously, if there's any issues with, the sheriff's office or wherever. But this would just be basically allowing us to have some time to go through and properly research without, getting caught in something that we don't have anything listed to as far as standards or rules that might apply. So I would like the board to just approve that, knowing that we could dismiss this at any time. Once we felt comfortable, like if we took the time to review the zoning laws and we felt like, well, we're pretty well covered, we don't have to have the moratorium. But this just basically gives us a chance to do some research and look at it and, review what's in our zoning laws and if there's any gaps there that we need to shore up before.
Okay. Brian, you have any comments?
Well, I'd be in favor of it if you seriously sit down and get it done before the 12 months and we're still in the same situation. So
Yeah.
if you're all serious about sitting down and getting something done
Yep.
quickly, then okay.
Well, and like I said, now it sounds like that there's some zoning regulations out there that we need to go back and review, and maybe a lot of this won't pertain to anything, and it could just end up being, hey, we're already covered. We have good zoning rules already that are gonna primarily protect the citizens of the county. So, yeah, I could come back in a couple weeks and say, after looking at some of that, then I don't feel like there's anything to worry about.
And I am totally opposed to this. I think we're jumping the gun. I stated before that ISAC is working on some things, talking to other counties and how they're doing it. And it's mainly the large counties that have the great big data centers at this point. If we're gonna do it and then we're gonna take it off in a couple of weeks, I think that's crazy. And if
Well,
we
I'm just
have,
saying that's
I think it's unnecessary. I'll say that.
possible, but
I'll change my word again, unnecessary. But I feel like if at this point our zoning is protecting us, then I think that, we really don't need this in place. There's another thing going on. There's a meeting next Tuesday evening. I think some of the smaller data centers that are in place for internet people and capabilities are a little scared about all of this, because you're lumping data centers into all one thing, and not all data centers are the same. And until we can learn some more about it, I think it's foolish to pass a moratorium.
well, that's what this does, is it allows us to gives us time to learn more about it and research it.
But I think we can do that without a moratorium.
Well, I
So
think
I
it's
guess,
just-
it's just whatever.
It's just an added protection that,
But there is a meeting next Tuesday night. Unfortunately, it's at the same time as our meeting, or it's at 5:30, but it's in Red Oak. And it's a session that's intended for elected officials, county and city leaders, economic development organization, business leaders. And basically to learn more about, I think, infrastructure, energy, land use considerations for the data centers and things. And this is put on by FMTC. And if at all possible, I would like to maybe move our meeting so that we could attend this. Just change it an hour or so, and so that we'd have time to get to Red Oak. But anyway, I guess we'll just move forward. Has this been looked at by the county attorney?
I did send it to Jim.
Okay,
Is there any issues with it, Jim, or how it was worded or anything? That,
You know, I'm no expert on these things either, but I didn't see anything in there that caused me a concern.
I think, I don't know, to me, we're jumping, there are so many things right now I think we're reacting to. Like we're fearful. We're fearful of solar, we're fearful of wind, we're fearful of data centers, we're fearful of
nobody's
battery.
fearful of solar. What we're fearful of is the state overstepping their bounds and telling us what to do with our land. That's.
Well, we haven't changed our ordinance.
Nobody's
anyway.
fear of solar, but
Let's move forward with this moratorium.
this
So
just
whatever you
gives
want to
us,
do.
I mean, this just gives us an opportunity to research. And it's not hurting anything. So, I mean, I think it shows us being proactive and being at least giving ourselves some time to make the right decisions if something comes up. Because I don't know all the facts. And if somebody
I know.
came next week and said, hey, we're putting in a data center, then we're too late. We're behind.
No.
Even if they said, I haven't looked at our zoning rules. So I'm not gonna, take somebody else's word for it. I want to look at it myself and figure out, are we really covered? Is everything good? But I want this to be in place so we don't have to worry about it. And I'm not saying drag it out for years. I put 12 months, I don't think it'll take that long to figure out where we're at. So.
Do you think it really needs 12 months?
Like I said, I just put that on there. It can be shortened. I mean, we can do away with it. Like I said, it just gives us time. It doesn't have to go the full 12 months. It's just a number out there. And I would say if I got to 12 months, like Brian said, and we haven't done any work or research or put any time and effort into it, then it goes away. Or if ISAC comes out with something, it goes, that makes sense to us, it goes away. It's just something, it's just like a placeholder for us to do some research and get our ducks in a row, understand our zoning ordinances, understand where the gaps are, and make good decisions going forward.
What do you want to do with it?
Well, I would make a motion that we approve resolution 30-2026.
So it says we can repeal it earlier by action of the board. So I'll second.
All in favor? Let's take a
Aye.
voice vote,
And do roll call.
roll call.
Mayor,
Yes,
Clark,
No,
Rogers.
thank you.
okay. Okay, we'll move on. Gene Wagner is the next one. Let me do this first.
I'm a little short. Gene Wagner. A couple things. I did review some of the reports that people had put on the Iowa Utilities Commission. I had a couple questions. Darren is here. On yours, it said,
Just
people who,
address us, not Darren.
am I loud enough?
Say,
Yeah.
just address us, not the crowd.
Oh,
You're here to talk.
I just talked to you guys. Oh, I'm
Yep,
sorry.
yeah.
Okay. What I was gonna say was there's some things in those that, again, use the terms, talk to the neighbors, they're all for it. And I presented some data last week that showed not all the neighbors were for it. I did want to remind people, whether you're for, against it, or have no opinion, if you want to talk to the Iowa Utilities Commission, those replies have to be in by just Thursday. July 23rd. Just a reminder to do that. I had a question about the difference between commercial land and agricultural land. Is there a difference in runoff requirements or I'm not understanding how it can go from, it can stay agricultural if you're getting a solar farm on it. Can you guys explain that to me? I'm not understanding why it would stay agricultural.
Because it's being placed in the agricultural and land that is designated as ag.
Right,
But
what I'm saying is they want to keep it as agriculture,
oh,
but it's a business.
no,
It's a
still stays-
utility.
It still stays as ag, but then it's taxed as utilities.
But why wouldn't it be changed in terms of the designation? That's what I'm not understanding.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm trying to
Except
think.
for,
Because because it is located in an ag area. It's still,
The zoning that is changed.
no, it's not, no, zoning has nothing to do with it. It's just the way that it's done by the assessor. That it is ag land, but you're putting a utility on that ag land, just like you have electrical, things on ag land. They're still ag land, but they're taxed as
But the
utilities.
income isn't agricultural anymore.
No.
It's utility.
It's
No,
utilities.
it's taxed as a utility.
Yeah,
Okay,
they're taxed a different way. Utilities are taxed differently.
differently. Okay,
Yeah.
so it has no bearing then on the tax element. I mean,
On the
the
zoning,
zoning.
no,
Okay, because I was confused because I was thinking if it stayed ag, it would be taxed at a certain rate.
No.
And
No.
if it was gone to commercial,
It is-
that would be a
it
different
is
rate. and that's what I
considered
was-
now, it would be considered a
A
utility.
utility, okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I wasn't sure about that and a utility, okay. And is that rate higher or lower than
It's
ag?
set by the state. The
It's set
state
by the
sends
state.
out the utilities and tells the auditor how to put them into
They
the
have
tax.
it. Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Okay. And then maybe you guys can answer it. In my talking with the neighbors, we weren't sure. I wanted to make sure I had the right number of acres that we were talking about. Do you guys have how many acres there are being bought and how many of them are going to be part of the solar panel project?
I do not know
What-
that.
So that I can be clear with the neighbors as to how much I don't want to be vague. I wanted to be more specific. So I
That would
didn't know
be
if
a
you guys
Mid-American
Yeah.
talk
question.
to them. Okay. And then, in my visiting with people, I did have time this afternoon. I did visit at the sheriff's office. It's not solar related, but it sort of is. The gun range, people are now the second time gone on it off hours.
That
And,
has nothing to do with us.
right. Well, what I'm saying is I talked to the sheriff to
Okay.
let him know that was going on.
Okay.
You know, just to inform him that there's something going on. And so he's
Okay.
gonna look, not the sheriff, but I told the sheriff, then I also went to the prison and talked to the warden this afternoon. I thought I would just get an appointment, but he invited me in and talked to him. And so he said that I mentioned about the solar panels project, and he said he didn't really have an opinion
Okay.
one way or the other on that. And I mentioned about the people going on the gun range, and he's gonna check into
But
it
we're
right
really
away.
just
So-
talking about solar tonight.
Okay, well, I wanted to let you know that I covered some other areas that we've talked about.
Okay.
And then I guess the other question I had, and it's maybe with the other people, but, here it is, my last note. That Mid-America has submitted changes to the ordinance. Is that true to you guys?
They just,
Or suggestions or?
suggestions,
Okay.
yeah.
Is that possible for the public to be made aware of what those are? And give some input
I
on
mean, they
that?
were just given to us to look at,
Okay.
so I don't know that it necessarily needs to be shared. I
Okay,
mean, it's not a secret, but
okay. I just didn't know
Yeah.
if they were available, if we could
Yeah.
come in and read them or that type of thing. I didn't know what
Oh.
the situation is on that.
I don't know. I guess we could do it.
I have a copy. so
Okay,
you
just
can
make it
come
available. Okay, very good.
come and
I just,
talk to
that
them.
way, they may have some very good suggestions and it would help me to understand what's going on. Other than that, I haven't made any more contact with neighbors yet, so I don't have any more updates with that data, but appreciate you letting us talk and listening very much. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chief. Okay. Darren?
Good evening. My name's Darren Oddie. Thank you for allowing me to speak again. Just to give you all advance notice, this is going to touch on a lot of topics, and it's going to be a little bit longer than last week. So, following up on comments I made last week, let me be clear about something first. I'm not against the state prison being our neighbor. I think it's overall good for the community, including the good paying jobs that come with it. But even good decisions carry trade-offs. And I want us to be honest about that instead of pretending every choice is painless. That's the spirit that I bring to this conversation too. There are pros and cons to every decision that gets made by y'all. We don't live in a land of utopia. With unanimous agreement and no decision this board makes will satisfy every resident of this county. What this community deserves is a process grounded in facts, not one shaped by a small, tightly connected group of people going around town making outlandish statements, trying to sway public sentiment, and by dominating these discussions, trying to persuade people in an attempt to try to get decisions made based on their personal preferences and shape policy without any true research or broad public input. They're more interested in blocking or delaying decisions rather than setting them. Their priorities are tied to maintaining power, influence, and control, which is then dressed up as policy, rather than public welfare. Land use and energy siting decisions carry real consequences for landowners, some of whom, as in our case, have held and worked their property for generations. Those decisions should be made on the basis of verifiable evidence. Flood maps, engineering assessments, and fair, sensible, and reasonable ordinances, not an informal social pressure exerted by a handful of vocal residents whose objections are not grounded in the specific facts of the parcels in question. When personal preference is allowed to substitute for documented fact, that substitution is then presented to the board and commission as if it reflects community consensus or established policy. The integrity of the process itself is compromised. We respectfully ask that this decision to be decided on the record on the facts specific to each parcel, rather than on the sentiment of a small group whose views do not constitute policy, however forcefully or repeatedly they are expressed. With that said, let's get into this. The local control cuts both ways. Counties and small towns rarely get the chance to shape their own future. At the meeting last week, the recurring theme from the board was this ordinance isn't a backdoor on solar. It's about preserving local control. Okay, I understand that instinct. Most of what shapes our lives, energy prices, tax policy, the broader economic currents of the region, gets decided somewhere else by someone else. Wanting a say in what happens on our land is legitimate. But here's the thing about local control. It's supposed to work in both directions. It should protect the landowner's right to enter into a voluntary agreement on their own property just as much as it protects the county's right to set reasonable standards. Right now, it's only being invoked to attempt to block, never permit. No one's being forced to participate. No one's land is being taken. No one's farming operation is being shut down. The people choosing to host solar facilities are simply exercising the same private property rights that Iowa landowners have valued for generations. This proposed 50 megawatt solar farm is a rare kind of opportunity. A chance for a county of roughly 15,000 people, one that's been on a slow, steady decline for years, to make a choice that pays dividends for decades on our own terms, rather than watching that opportunity get claimed by the county down the road. 6 years in the making. 6 years in the making is not a rush job. Because of development timelines, regulatory requirements, and siting complexities, planning for new generation resources has to happen years, sometimes a decade or more, before those resources ever serve a single customer. MidAmerican has built its reputation on staying ahead of that curve, leveraging new technology and making prudent, future-focused decisions on behalf of the customers who depend on it. That approach didn't emerge in a vacuum. It was built on supportive energy policy at the state and federal level, championed by leaders across the political spectrum for over 2 decades. More than 40 years ago, in 1983, Iowa became the very first state in the nation to pass a renewable portfolio standard, requiring utilities to source a share of their energy from renewable projects. That early bipartisan bet is a big part of why MidAmerican is a renewable energy leader today. MidAmerican's current generation plan, called the Resource Evaluation Study, which is filed with the Iowa Utilities Commission, reflects an all of the above strategy, a strong continued commitment to renewables paired with reliable on-call power sources to meet the real growth in customer demand. That plan wasn't written behind closed doors. It came out of a collaborative, transparent process involving the IUC Commission, the Office of Consumer Advocate, the Iowa Business Energy Coalition, the Iowa Association of Municipal Utilities, the Environmental Law and Policy Center, the Iowa Environmental Council, the Sierra Club, Microsoft, and Google. That's not a fringe wish list. That's a broad coalition of people with very different interests agreeing on where Iowa's energy future needs to go. This particular project isn't a proposal that showed up overnight either. Landowners and MidAmerican have been working through this specific process for over 6 years. That's 6 years of studies, permitting, coordination with the state, work with the IUC, and public input. That is not the timeline of a company trying to run over a county or muscle something through. That's the timeline of a project built the right way by an Iowa company headquartered in Des Moines, Iowa. A company that serves 820,000 electric customers and 797,000 natural gas customers across Iowa, Illinois, Nebraska, and South Dakota. This isn't some fly-by-night, out-of-state operator with no stake in how it's remembered here. MidAmerican has a reputation to protect, and that reputation depends on happy neighbors. What the numbers actually say. A 50 megawatt solar facility, once operational, generates enough electricity to power roughly 8,000 to 10,000 average Iowa homes per year with clean, locally produced energy, regardless of where that electricity is sent to be used. That's power drawn from sunlight that would otherwise just fall on a field and warm the dirt. That's not speculation, that's arithmetic. The long-term strategy that built MidAmerican's renewable portfolio is paid off for customers directly. Zero fuel cost resources like wind and increasingly solar let the company pass real savings through to the ratepayers, us. In 2020, not necessarily in Page County, but I'll get to that in a minute. In 2023, MidAmerican's rates sat 42% below the national average, 9th lowest in the entire country. Low rates paired with a high share of renewables is not a coincidence. It's a formula, and it's one of the reasons businesses have chosen to locate to Iowa, bringing jobs, capital investment, and tax revenue with them. Mid-American is now seeing above average load growth and needs to add capacity to keep up. Reliable, affordable energy matters enormously to a state whose economy leans on heavy energy users, such as advanced manufacturers, high-tech companies, and agriculture. If Iowa wants to keep attracting that kind of investment and keep the jobs that come with it, we need policies at the local level that support responsible energy generation development rather than reflexively blocking it. What it means for our tax base. Projects of this size typically generate tens of thousands of dollars in new annual tax revenue for a county and its local taxing bodies. This project is estimated at more than $50,000 in extra annual revenue, which works out to somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 to $2 million or more over the life of the project. That's money that doesn't require raising a single resident's property tax bill. In Iowa, utility scale solar can generate close to 6 times more in local property taxes than the same acreage in traditional farmland. Depending on input, that revenue flows straight into schools, roads, bridges, and emergency services. For a county of our size, that's the kind of money that resurfaces roads, modernizes a firehouse, supports the school district, or simply eases the tax burden on everyone else. This is new money generated by land that would otherwise contribute a fraction of that amount as cropland. Now let's talk about land use because the fears are overstated. Solar isn't a permanent transformation of the landscape. It's a passive, low-impact use of land, unlike many industrial developments. Solar facilities have no smokestacks, consume virtually no water, and generate little noise beyond routine maintenance activities. I want to respectfully address Gene and Keith Wagner's concern directly. Their property, whose property includes land designated as a floodplain, which has been spelled out in their objection letter submitted to the IUC Commission website. Their concern is that solar development could increase drainage runoff onto their neighboring property. While I'm not an engineer or a hydrologist, I have spent considerable time recently researching this issue. The evidence suggests that well-designed solar sites can actually reduce runoff and erosion through vegetation management and engineered stormwater controls, not increase it. Solar sites done right typically involve soil health over time, typically improve soil health over time. The perennial vegetation planted around and beneath the panels helps stabilize soil, reduce erosion, and increase water filtration. Native grasses often develop root systems far deeper than a mowed lawn, helping to aerate compacted soils and increase organic matter in the ground. Mid-American also adds organic carbon that feeds the microbial networks healthy soil depends on. The panels themselves provide shade that cools soil temperature and helps it retain moisture. Now, soil panels are impervious surfaces, and it's fair to ask whether that behaves like pavement in a storm. Solar panels are indeed impervious to water, so they behave similarly to pavement in that they prevent infiltration and can contribute to surface runoff during storms. But after conducting a year-long field investigation of soil moisture patterns, solar radiation, and vegetation at 2 solar farms in central Pennsylvania, built on slopes representative of the Northeast US, the researchers concluded that such installations should not present negative implications for stormwater management. In findings published in the Journal of Hydrology, the team reported that healthy vegetation and well-draining soils can help manage runoff on solar farms. And where necessary, on more challenging landscapes, engineered stormwater controls can manage any unmitigated runoff. So well-designed solar farms do not necessarily create more runoff than surrounding land. And in many cases, they can even reduce it. How runoff is mitigated? Research from Penn State and others, including Science Daily, July 18th, 2024, Stormwater Report, Paving the Way Toward Stormwater-Friendly Solar Farms, July 29th, 2024, and a study by the Department of Energy titled Hydraulic Response of Solar Farms, written by Lauren Cook and Richard McEwen and published in the Journal of Hydrologic Engineering, shows that runoff and erosion impacts can be easily mitigated and controlled through first, vegetation cover. Healthy grass or other ground cover under panels enhances infiltration and reduces erosion. Second, design features. Open spaces between rows, infiltration trenches, or engineered basins can capture and slow runoff. Third, maintenance. Keeping ground cover intact and avoiding gravel or bare soil under panels prevents peak discharge increases. There's also key findings from other studies in Maryland, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Ohio, one of which is a study of stormwater regulations for solar site development, published in Solar Builder magazine. Containing research specifically from the solar installations in Pennsylvania, they found that healthy vegetation and well-draining soil beneath and around panels effectively mitigate runoff and erosion. Soil directly under the panel drip lines, where water sheets off the edges, actually showed 19% higher moisture than nearby land, while soil directly beneath the panels themselves ran almost 25% drier, indicating water redistribution rather than net increase in runoff. 2, on flat, well-draining land, runoff concerns are minimal. On slopes, engineered controls are recommended. And 3, without vegetation or proper drainage, bare or gravel ground under panels can significantly increase peak flow. Thankfully, due to the collaboration of multiple states and agencies throughout the East Coast, the stormwater requirements for solar panel installation throughout the remainder of the U.S. is relatively easy to predict. The bottom line here is localized runoff during heavy rain can be managed by the open spacing between panel rows and engineered infiltration basins and trenches. Solar farms can behave like pavement in that they prevent infiltration, but with proper siting, vegetation, and drainage design, they can be as stormwater friendly as, or even more so than some conventional land uses. Now, poorly managed sites, especially on slopes with bare or gravel ground, can indeed increase runoff and erosion, but these issues are avoidable with good engineering and maintenance. In other words, a well-designed solar farm design does not have to compromise stormwater management or water quality, and the evidence backs that up. Obviously, Mid-American doesn't want soil erosion creating problems with their multi-million-dollar solar development either. And they don't anticipate any permanent negative impact to agricultural use from construction, operation, or maintenance. Whatever impacts do occur are expected to be minor and temporary, and neighboring farmland keeps operating without interruption throughout. With all that evidence and research being said, does the fact that because Gene and Keith Wagner live and cultivate land in a floodplain mean that as their neighbors, we can't build or construct anything on our land that we've owned and cultivated through generations of my family for over 100 years? Basically, what they're trying to say is the only thing that we're allowed to do with our land is to use it for cultivation because their land is in a flood zone. I find that utterly absurd and contrary to common sense. Because our parcel is not located in a floodplain. nor are any of the other parcels in the land agreement with Mid-American. No ordinance, statute, or engineering finding has been cited that would justify extending a neighboring property's floodplain designation to our land. Floodplain status is a parcel specific, parcel specific determined by FEMA flood maps and hydrological data tied to a given piece of property, not by a proximity to a neighbor's land. Objecting to the proposed solar development on the basis of Gene and Keith Wagner's floodplain status when our own parcel carries no such designation is not a valid basis for denial of this solar development. Generations of my family have owned and farmed this land for over a century. We ask that the board and the commission to evaluate the proposed use of our property and the property of the other landowners on its own merits, based on the actual flood risk and regulatory status of our parcel, which is unencumbered by any floodplain designation, rather than an unsubstantiated argument borrowed from a neighboring landowner situation. I'll say this plainly. A solar farm is not going to do horrendous damage to this land, no matter how much heated rhetoric gets thrown around on the subject. In fact, solar is one of the few land uses that is reversible. Unlike a subdivision, commercial development, or industrial facility, a solar project can be removed at the end of its life and the land returned to agricultural production. These projects run a life cycle of roughly 30 to 40 years, during which the ground beneath and between the rows is essentially taken out of intensive production, like a generation-long fallow period that lets the soil rebuild structure and organic matter. That fallow, green-covered land actually ends up retaining more water and reducing runoff. When the project reaches the end of its life, the panels come down, the land is restored, and it can be returned to full agricultural use. Now, compare that to a landfill, a feedlot, or an industrial park, like the one just approved on the south side of town, which will permanently remove Page County farmland from production. And I haven't heard a single person in this room raise a concern about that loss of productive farmland. Another thing that I haven't heard anyone raise a concern about is the loss of productive farmland that gets put into CRP for annual payments to farmers to not farm their land. Iowa has roughly 186,247 acres newly accepted into the Federal Conservative Reserve Program, CRP, for 2026. According to USD's Farm Service Agency, FSA, Iowa's total CRP enrollment is larger than just this year's new acceptances. Since CRP contracts run for years, and this figure is just the 26 enrollment cycle, which included both re-enrollments of expiring contracts and newly offered land. Iowa statewide, as of April 2026, Iowa has 1,631,565 acres enrolled in CRP across all sign-up types, general, continuous, and grasslands, generating almost $400 million in annual rental payments, an average of greater than $240 per acre statewide, not to farm the land. Now, CRP is a federal program funded and administered by the U.S. Department of Agriculture through the FSA. Every rental payment and cost share dollar comes from the federal budget. It's an authorized and funded through the Farm Bill. That said, there's a state level wrinkle in Iowa specifically. The Iowa legislature makes an annual appropriation from the state's Environment First Fund to the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship to support CRP enrollment. But the state money funds outreach, administration, and enrollment assistance, helping farmers sign up, cost share on top of the federal payment, and technical support. Not the core annual rental payments themselves. Those rental payments are landowners actually receive from the federal dollars. So the check the farmers get for enrolled acres is federal money, though Iowa kicks in some supplemental state funding around the edges of the program to pay farmers not to farm their land. And yet we have people that are worried about 400 acres of land being taken out of production for this solar project. To put the scale in perspective, Mid-American's upcoming solar projects statewide will use about 4,800 acres, just 0.016% of Iowa's 30 million acres of farmland, while delivering power to thousands of homes. This specific 50 megawatt project will use about 400 acres, a small fraction of Page County's total farmland, leaving the overwhelming majority of our agriculture base untouched. Then there's the question that was brought up for debate to Kelsey Ballard with Mid-American by Supervisor Maher, and as recently as yesterday by Jean Wagner in her objection letter submitted to the IUC Commission website. That all of this electricity generated by this solar farm won't all be going to just Page County or even to just neighbors of the solar development, because we're on REC. And that's a ridiculous argument, because that's not how the grid or any of the infrastructure we already depend on has ever worked. Now, Kelsey had an excellent response to Supervisor Maher's question regarding this just last week. Albeit not too technical, but a little bit complex when you start talking about electrons and how and where they go. So let's try to put the things in perspective and simplify that a little bit in layman's terms. Sorry for the length of this, but I got a lot of topics here. Nobody expects all of the corn grown here in Page County to be eaten by people in Page County. Nobody expects the cattle that are fed and the beef that's grown here to be eaten only by people in Page County. Nobody expects all the trailers built here by H&H Trailers to only be sold to people in Page County. Nobody expects all the industrial products built here by NSK, Lylecorp, Easyway to only be sold to people in Page County. Nobody expects the ethanol produced at the plant down the road in Poet, Iowa to fuel only cars registered to Hardin County. And nobody expects the electricity that already flows through the lines crossing our farmland right now from existing wind, coal, or gas generation elsewhere to somehow be earmarked exclusively for the county it happened to pass through. That's simply not how a regional electric grid functions, and it's never been the standard we've applied to any other resource this county produces or hosts. The electricity generated here will feed into Mid-America's broader distribution system, and in exchange, this county draws power from that same shared system every single day, including on the days our wind isn't blowing or our sun isn't shining. That reciprocity is the entire point of an interconnected grid. It makes the system more reliable for everyone, including us, not less reliable. Page County residents benefit from energy generation sited in other counties. Asking this project to somehow ring fence its output for local use only isn't a reasonable standard. It's a standard nobody applies to any other form of infrastructure, and it's not one we'd want applied to us if the situation were reversed. What Page County actually keeps, regardless of where the electrons ultimately go, is the part that matters most locally, the tax base, the $50,000 plus in new annual revenue, the 1.5 to 2 million or more over the life of the project, the payments to landowners, the temporary construction jobs, and the many workers and the money workers spend in town. None of that depends on where the power ends up. A county doesn't have to consume every watt a generator produces within its own borders to benefit from having that generator. And the tax revenue in particular stays right here, no matter which direction the transmission lines carry the electricity. If the power might go somewhere else, were a legitimate reason to reject a generation project, we'd have to apply that same logic to the transmission lines already crossing this county, the wind turbines already turning in neighboring counties, and frankly, to almost every piece of energy infrastructure in the state. Nobody's proposing we tear any of that out. This ejection isn't really about where the electricity goes. It's a rhetorical stand-in for a decision that's already been made for other reasons, dressed up to sound like a technical concern. It isn't one. As for jobs and landowners, lost my place, sorry about that. Construction of a project this site typically employs dozens of workers over many months. Electricians, equipment operators, laborers. Many of them local, spending paychecks at the Ice House, Jay's Pizza, Jay Bruner's, True Brew Coffee House, the hardware store, the gas stations, and those who aren't local staying in local hotels. It's a temporary boost, but a real one, at a time when rural communities are hungry for exactly that kind of economic activity. And then there's the landowners themselves. For farmers dealing with thin margins, unpredictable weather, and volatile commodity prices, a long-term lease or sale with a solar developer offers something genuinely rare in agriculture: stability, a guaranteed predictable income stream, locked in for decades. That doesn't rise or fall with rainfall or grain futures. This isn't a corporation seizing land against anyone's will. It's landowners making a voluntary, informed choice about how to use what belongs to them. That choice deserves respect, not resistance. The ordinance problem. Some residents have raised concerns about noise, aesthetics, irrigation flow, or simply the pace of change. Those are fair questions, and they deserve honest answers, not dismissal. But the answer to fair questions isn't an ordinance written so strictly it functions as a de facto ban. And there's a real question hanging over this one. Was it really written with solar in mind, or was it built to keep out wind turbines, with solar swept in almost as an afterthought? National noise and setback standards for the solar exist for a reason. They reflect years of engineering data and real-world experience across thousands of installations nationwide. This ordinance, by contrast, appears to be cut and paste of standards written by other communities, possibly Madison County mostly, to keep out wind turbines. Adopted here without any outreach to Mid-American and without very much independent research into solar specifically. What followed was a year-long moratorium, billed as a research period, but used as a delay tactic. I'd like to ask directly Supervisor Maher, what impartial, unprejudiced, and unbiased research was actually conducted during that year? I'm not talking about meeting minutes where the topic was discussed. I'm talking about actual research, documented and made public, on what was found to be beneficial to this community and what wasn't. Did you research the benefits of agrivoltaic farming? This type of farming is growing across the world. What is agrivoltaics? Agrivoltaic farming combines solar energy production with agricultural activities on the same land, allowing farmers to harvest the sun twice for both electricity and crops. Agrivoltaics, also known as dual-use solar, agri-solar, or solar sharing, involves installing under photovoltaic PV panels above or between agricultural crops, livestock grazing areas, or pollinator habitats. This approach allows land to simultaneously generate renewable energy and support agricultural production, optimizing land use efficiency and reducing competition between energy and food production. That's sightings from the Department of Energy studies. Did you even know that solar panels and farming can be combined together? Did you know if set up properly, you can even still raise animals such as cattle around the solar panels? Benefits of agrivoltaic systems: land use efficiency revolution, which agrivoltaic systems can achieve 60 to 70% higher land productivity compared to separate solar and agricultural installations, with some cases showing up to 186% efficiency while maintaining or improving crop yields for solar tolerant plants like lettuce and potatoes. Economic advantages: farmers can earn $300 to $2,000 per acre annually from solar lease payments while continuing agricultural production. Additionally, agrivoltaics can reduce input costs by 10 to 30% through water savings and natural cooling, increasing total economic value per acre by over 30%. Environmental and climate benefits: these systems provide 14 to 50% water conservation, protect crops from extreme weather, and support biodiversity, including 20-fold increase in native bee populations. They also reduce greenhouse gas emissions by up to 69% compared to separate systems. There's microclimate change advantages as well. The conclusion: agrivoltaic farming represents a sustainable solution to land use conflicts, addressing both the need for renewable energy and food production. By integrating solar panels with crops, livestock, or pollinator habitats, farmers can increase revenue, conserve resources, enhance biodiversity, and improve climate resilience, making it a promising approach for the future of agriculture and energy. That's from the Department of Energy. Agrivoltaics can keep farmers, grow crops, and harness solar power. So it's an emerging field, and if you are committed to it, you could figure out how to make it work. Were any discussions held with Mid-American to talk about these possibilities of design implementation? Was any research done regarding photovoltaic panels, protecting the plants growing underneath them from heavy rain and hail? Were you aware that 95% of tested PV modules resisted hail undamaged? Was any research done to understand that the PV modules ensure that less water is needed for irrigation because the shade of the panels allowing the soil to stay wet for 2 days instead of 2 hours, saving water and protecting the plants for overheating? Or were you and Jacob Holmes only listening to that small, tightly connected group of people who are going around town making outlandish statements, trying to sway public sentiment to make your decisions based on only what you've heard from them and what they want? Because what we do know is that the board declined Mid-American's simple offer for an individually guided or group guided tour of an existing solar farm, and showed no apparent openness to the potential benefits this project could bring the county, just outright refusing to take the time necessary to gather valuable information and come to an unbiased decision. When a community imposes standards far stricter than the national norm for solar, it isn't protecting residents from a genuine risk. It's blocking a project by another name, usually for reasons that have very little to do with noise or the view. Every comment at last week's meeting circled back to the same claim. Nobody here is against solar. They just want to protect local control. Fine, let's look at that at face value. If it's true, the fix is simple. Update the ordinance to the solar specific provisions match, so the solar specific provisions match national standards, separate from whatever restrictions the board wants to keep in place for wind turbines. Ordinances get updated all the time. It might be inconvenient to the board, but it's nothing out of the ordinary. So I'll ask again, because I haven't yet heard a real answer. What specifically is the stricter ordinance protecting? What harm to what person or what property justifies noise and setback rules that were built for wind turbines being applied to a solar project instead? Finally, I know you guys are all ready for this end to end, but there's the bigger picture. Electricity demand is rising nationwide, driven by data centers, electric vehicles, personal electronics, and basic population growth. Whatever anyone's opinion of any of those individual trends, the demand curve is real, and it's enormous. Because the future is coming, and technology and energy generation advancements are a huge part of it, whether y'all like it or not. I understand not everyone likes wind turbines or solar, and I understand that change can make people uncomfortable. But this county has a choice. Participate in these advancements or get left behind by blocking anything and everything that threatens your comfort zone. I say choose wisely, because this opportunity comes at a time when the county has already recently lost jobs and tax revenue from part of the NSK AKS manufacturing capacity leaving town. Where will the jobs and tax base come from when the rest of NSK AKS closes the doors and leaves town? This project offers additional energy generation diversity and represents a meaningful investment in Page County. I've watched the lengths Mid-American has gone to work with this board, only to run into unnecessary delay and what amounts to a resistance to change and a de facto ban. Communities that build energy generation capacity now and capture the tax revenue, the jobs, and the negotiating leverage that comes with it will be in a stronger position a decade from now than communities that simply said no and watch the opportunity move to the next county over. I feel it's kind of foolish for any county or small community to not be jumping through hoops and taking advantage of this opportunity. And I think it's short-sighted of this supervisor board not to take advantage of this while it's on the table. I'm encouraged by Mid-American's continued commitment to this project. A 50 megawatt solar farm isn't a threat to who we are. It's an investment in what we can become, a community with a stronger tax base, more resilient family farms, and a real stake in the energy economy of the future. That's worth supporting. Solar energy is not a threat to Page County. It's another opportunity for Page County, an opportunity for landowners, for taxpayers, for economic development, and for future generations. And opportunities like this don't come around often. For those reasons, I encourage modifying the county ordinance that's so prohibitive and fast track approval of this project. Thank you for your time.
Hey, Kelsey.
Good evening again. Kelsey Ballard, Mid-American Energy Company. You guys received an email from me following the meeting last week, reiterating some of my comments, but also offering a formal agreement that I believe, as I explained last week, could be beneficial to both of us as we look to both cost effectively and from a timeline, come to agreement on what this project might look like as we proceed.
You get the microphone right to your mouth. And I'm, all I have area awesome. Please, I can't hear what you're saying.
So you should have an agreement in front of you. I think it would be mutually beneficial. It's of course in a draft state, so happy to answer questions about that. As you consider your next steps, whether it's that agreement or something else. I did look back at timeline after I came last week, and we first reached out to JD about this project in 2020. I found communications with the Board of Supervisors, previous board, in 2021. Those continued through 23 and 24. And here we are in 2026, making this the longest project I've been a part of from a zoning perspective. So it's been a long road to get here. I also want to address the outreach, if you will, to neighbors. So Mid-American has over 40 renewable projects in the state of Iowa. We consistently refer to neighbors in a setback, from a setback standpoint, as residences, and more specifically occupied residences. This project sits very well from that perspective. Within 1,000 feet of the project area, we have 3 residences. 2 are participating, and we continue conversations with the 3rd. There's 2 more residences at around 1,100 feet. We continue to talk to those residences as well. This is more residential outreach than we've done for any other solar project that I'm aware of. Furthermore, to the point of sentiment from residences, I'm sure you can imagine that very few people are either completely for or completely against the project. But what's interesting to us is the dialogue that's behind it. And what we've consistently heard are concerns that we believe can be resolved through thoughtful design, engineering, and intention. And that's what we've continued to do with these neighbors. Furthermore, now that we're in the IUC process, we have done 2 large-scale mailings. Those are part of that IUC process. I believe each of those has gone to over 90 people. Each of those letters also had email and contact information for those folks to reach out to us. I think that first mailing went out back in May. And even from that campaign, if you will, which is broader than the ordinance would require, we've not heard any concerns that can't be addressed by our thoughtful design and engineering, which is what's been incorporated into the agreement that's in front of you. So I mentioned earlier, I did a review of your zoning ordinance. So I believe in ag zoning, a principal structure can be 2.5 stories high. I believe that structure also would be allowed to have an air conditioning unit on it. At the existing setback distances, an air conditioning unit on a residence would be louder than we are proposing for this project to be. I think that you could do that with a more simplified, streamlined process with less outreach to the neighbors than we've done. And furthermore, if you were to do, instead of a residence, a special use request or permit, I believe that the notice required under that is to adjoining property owners by mail 5 days in advance of a hearing. So when I look at all of this together, the timeline that we've been here, the things that we've done for this project, I do believe we've done a lot of work. I believe we continue to do a lot of work, and I hope that our communication shows that with each of you and with folks here in this room tonight. So as you consider our proposal, please keep those things in mind. We hope that this project has had the communication and the forethought to be deserving of at least a standalone agreement with all of you because of its status and because of where we are tonight. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions about the project, about what I've said tonight, or anything you'd like to discuss with me on the agreement.
So you said you had 3 people that were within
3 residents.
3 residents
within 1,000 feet.
within 1,000 feet.
Yep.
And you've worked out 2 of them are part of the project already.
That's
anyway.
correct. That's
Okay, and the 3rd is the one you're reaching out.
Yep, we've had
Or
multiple
you've had multiple.
conversations with that family. Yep.
Are they up for waiving the setbacks? Because I think the setback is the only issue. correct?
So the no,
Because
that's not correct.
nobody's saying that the project can't go forward. It's just, can you fit in the setbacks with what's going on?
Okay, so first of all, the setback is a half mile. That's
Yep.
extreme. When you look at any of the surrounding counties, that's a lot. And furthermore, it's not a half mile to a residence. It's a half mile for any land. So that goes well above and beyond neighboring counties setbacks. A waiver or even just that requirement is not the only thing that makes this ordinance hard to work with. I think we've talked about some things in the ordinance are confusing whether it goes in front of a board of adjustment or a board of supervisors because that language was copied from multiple different places. So there's inconsistencies where as we stand here today, even if we, came to an agreement with you on setbacks, there are other things that would be problematic for sort of just submitting an application and going through that process with the county. I think there's like land use standards in there that are no longer done by the state. There's the noise level. We've talked about that. We can work with the 15 feet height restriction. That one's a little perplexing to me as well, since that's shorter than a ranch house in most cases, but we can work with the 15-foot height limit. So that there are a number of things in the way the ordinance is written and the way the process works that would give, we'd still have a lot to talk about. And so to that end, we do continue talking with neighbors and residences. As I said last week, waiver, the way it's written in the ordinance, is not on its face clear what would need to be done, what that would need to contemplate. So again, it's just sort of that ambiguity for 6 years in to working with the county would make it hard for us to find a path forward in the timeframe we need to.
Yeah, and the other thing of the 6-year deal that keeps coming up is there was never any, so I've gone through all the minutes from 2020 to 2021, started working on minutes of 2022. Never did find anywhere where Mid-American had came to the board and discussed this project. Now, you said you reached out to JD. That's fine, but it never did cross the board. The first time I ever heard of this project was after we put in a moratorium because we wanted to start working on a solar ordinance. And I think somebody called me from Mid-American and said, hey, we've got a project already going in Page County. I had no idea getting on this board and understanding that was even a thing.
So interestingly, I found, I think I found that email you're referencing where there was an email attached from 2021. Sarah Houlihan is still a counterpart of mine. I believe it came from her to at least the two of you. And I believe that the previous board member would have been in that 2023 timeframe. And within that email is attached a previous communication from 2021 where we had sent some suggestions of ordinance work and things to look at. In fact, it seemed to me from reviewing that communication that was sent to the board, the setbacks being considered at that time were 1 to 200 feet. So I have those emails.
Yep.
I haven't looked back at minutes, so
Okay.
I'll give you that. But I think, we view communication with the board via email, like I did earlier this week, to be working with the board in addition to showing up with these at those meetings. So I believe it's in email form going back to 21, and that was resent to you as recently as 2023.
Okay. Yeah, so that was just, and yeah, so this is not, I keep reiterating this, but it keeps being, I think this whole discussion seems to fit around that this board is against solar or I'm against solar. That's not the case. So I keep telling everybody, that this is not about the solar being bad or good. That's not what's being discussed here. It's basically about the setbacks. And what the setbacks do is they drive dialogue between you and maybe the non-participating landowner and gives them some securities that you're not intruding on their land. And it's very similar to if you lived in town, you can't do certain things because it impacts your neighbors. And you said a half mile. I think it's a half mile from a non-participating resident.
That's not correct. It's
Okay.
a half mile from.
It should be a non,
non-participating
yeah.
one.
So maybe that's some language that we gotta clean up. That's in there. That's misspoken, but pretty sure that was the intent of that was from a non-participating residence, but, also this was done way differently than the wind. And it was done with lots of transparency. I believe we had it on the docket, on the agenda 16 different times during the whole year that we went through the moratorium and started working on the project. We read excerpts and discussed openly every meeting about the project and about the different things that we wanted to put in the ordinance. I have stacks and stacks of ordinances that I collected throughout the state, and highlighted sections of what was being done, as well as, information and studying that I did. I didn't just come up with stuff and pull it out of the air, or it was never even copied from the wind. The wind was separate. It was done and over with.
It was mostly
This-
from the
this
Mills
was-
County ordinance, wasn't
We did
it?
a lot from Mills County. A lot of it was taken from them.
I think we sent in, if I'm remembering right, 2024, kind of a comparison of how this ordinance sat compared to the neighboring counties. So a couple of things on that. One, within zoning ordinances by each county, there are uniquenesses. And so when you copy and paste sections of it, it does tend to get sort of clunky in how does the county then follow that? And so that's one of the things I was saying earlier. It's just, there's not enough clarity there as to what board would even decide this right now in every aspect, because in the ordinance kind of conflicts. And my guess is that those two
Okay.
pieces came from
Sure.
a different county. So that's something that I think needs some work. But specifically to the surrounding counties, that half mile setback is measurably multiples larger than
Right.
the other surrounding county ordinances. And to Darren's point, I'm not familiar with why or what would make this Page County need multiple larger setbacks to do just what you're saying, kind of protect property in general and property in the county, landowners that want to and don't want to participate. So I think I don't disagree with kind of the pieces you're saying of how we
Right.
got here, but those nuances are important and part of what I'm trying to articulate why this didn't work out the same as Mills County.
Okay.
Could we agree to start looking at the solar ordinance to redo it?
We can. My understanding is any changes to the ordinance, we would have to follow the amendment process. There would have to be public hearings, just
Right.
like we did when we were doing it. And there would have to be public comment and being allowed.
But we would just need to start working on
But
it.
I do feel like part of me is like, I don't want to cave on an ordinance that we put in place and feel like now we've been pushed to retract a rule or an ordinance when it's already been established because of the company doesn't like the ordinance. Because I feel that sets a precedent of anybody that doesn't like an ordinance, then they just come and say, well, we don't like that ordinance. You need to do what we do, what we want.
But if a mistake was made when that was done,
Oh, I agree.
Possibly. Then I don't
Yeah, I
think we
agree.
need
There's-
to look at it that way. And I voted against that ordinance, so I'm perfectly willing to move forward and work on it, but
And I said, I think quite a couple weeks ago that I was willing to go back and look at some wording or some things that are not clear, like the waiver process, maybe now that you brought up the residents, that needs to be looked at and modified or redone. I am for doing that, cleaning it up.
Okay.
So I think that serves us better, having a cleaner ordinance. What I'm not in favor of is bending over and And the thing that you sent us with the 300-foot setback, I don't think I would much rather negotiate that a little bit more. And look at, because I don't think that is what we want to do either, as far as setbacks. So, to me, I don't really want to negotiate setbacks, but I do want to look at if it's from a residence house or in adjacent land. I think there's a big discrepancy there, and that needs to be cleaned up. So I would agree with that. And
some wording that maybe is wrong or whatever. we'll
correct,
look at.
yeah, if we need to clean up the wording.
In the meantime, our next item is to discuss hiring Ehlers and Cooney, so, we're doing two different things, but I think we can still work on the ordinance. While we're doing that, maybe. But we're looking to them for guidance for this.
Right, for the
Yeah,
IUC.
Right. Yeah,
And, I'm fine with leaving it up to the IUC as well. So, if we're gonna go that route, we can, but
I think even if they do that, we probably will have to redo the ordinance.
we can,
Because,
we
I
can
mean,
clean
we
up the
should.
wording, but I want it to be, so I know that, I don't think, Mid-American probably doesn't want the publicity of saying we're going around a county with an ordinance to do a project. I don't think but that's what's happening. And so, like it or not, that ordinance was done with transparency. It was done in the open. Nothing was done secretly. The public had lots of time to weigh in. We had readings on it.
I think it was done right after the wind, and I think a lot of the wind carried over to that. As far as setbacks and everything else, and I think a solar project is different than.
Oh, I agree. Solar is different.
Than wind, so the setback is really not that necessary, and if there's only three landowners, three participating, then,
Then they should have no problem
No.
with the project. If there's only 3 people and 2 of them are already on board and the other one you're in negotiations with.
The way your ordinance is written today, but that's
Okay,
part of why
so
we
we
continue.
can clean that up and that could be a non-issue.
So I think what I know about timelines, and to your point, having seen the ordinance, as it went through 2024, we've asked the Utilities Commission for a decision this year. And so the way that schedule works, my understanding would be timeline wise, the agreement that I've placed in front of you specific to this project because of the conversations we've had or because of the way we've intentionally cited it would be a way to quickly get to an agreement where the county is at the table with us and we're talking about maybe it's setbacks, maybe it doesn't end up being 300 feet. That's how I think we could do that for this project. And then, of course, we're willing to work with you on an ordinance amendment, but timeline wise, it seems to me like you want to spend a little bit more time working on that ordinance and going through 3 readings, and then we would have to apply, right? And so I don't know that gets us to.
So you want the agreement?
I think the agreement is faster and more efficient and could be done within the timelines that's in front of both of us with the IUC. I'm not saying you couldn't do it with the ordinance, but I think it would be an uphill battle.
Well, I think we need to
So-
probably talk to Ehlers before anything is done.
So anyway, this project should have been done before I got on here, but anyway. And what really frustrates me is after I got on a year and a half ago, first call I got, okay, yeah, it's a tough ordinance, but I shouldn't have to be the one to come in and change this ordinance. So he said, what can we do? Go out and get the waivers, talk to the people, get a waiver. Okay, we'll talk to them. We've talked to them. No, you haven't. Let's see them. Well, I got 5 left. I can't get them. Okay, so where do we stand on those? Because if it would have been somebody half a mile away, nothing here, don't even live here, that was against it, we could come in and we could change the ordinance or whatever we had to do. So then that was never settled. The windmills probably took precedence over this situation because you guys went and bought that. So you probably focused all your attention to that project. And this got laid around for quite a while. Oh, we're talking. Oh, well, yeah, okay. But anyway, then you come back and you go right to the board. Oh, we're talking. Okay, then why would you go to the board? And now that you went to the board, are we running out of time there? So we got to come back to us to get the agreement? I mean, where are we sitting on this? And then also in here you got, so you came in and said you didn't like our waiver aspect. Well, then you go in here and you put in here in the sound limitation, unless waived in writing. Is that 2 words? Is that 3 words? Is that 2 sentences? I mean, that's what you said last time. We couldn't do it because we didn't have it specific. So there's nothing specific there. And now, where are we at in this debate? Okay, we're in a rush. We got to do an agreement. I'm in favor of that, but let's go through it and let's get rid of the stuff that you guys just put in, and we'll put in some stuff. So it confuses me, you know, why are we jumping around?
Yeah, so,
You running out of time, or what's the situation?
time is certainly an aspect of it. I mentioned last week, we'd like to have this project in service in 2028, by the end of the year in 2028, which means we need to be placing equipment orders and progressing engineering toward the end of this year. So there is a timeline driver. In terms of, you know, the wind versus solar, I have a lot of people in my group working on a lot of projects all at one time. I don't see it as any one project is more important than the other. I travel around to all different counties, as do they. And so from that standpoint, I think we, behind the scenes, work to progress design, try to figure out if there is something else possible that would work within your ordinance play out. Like, what would this process look like? What would an application look like? What would a waiver request look like if we needed to come to you and say, hey, we can't do a half mile? Is there a legal process that would get us certainty on this project? And ultimately what we came to with your ordinance is, the answer is no. There is not a process defined in the ordinance that could get us a permit with certainty around some of these ambiguities we've discussed. And so circling back to the talk to landowners. So for one thing, that outreach was done to any adjoining landowner, because that's how we interpret the ordinance. It's a half mile to any landowner, not just residences. And at the time, and since then, you know, we've tried mailings, we've tried door knocking and leaving business cards, we've tried phone calls. Sometimes people answer the door and sometimes they don't. Sometimes we miss them because they're out of the country or at the office. But we do, in those processes, try multiple ways to connect with people by leaving our information or kind of reaching them where they are. I think that, you know, my understanding, and I wasn't part of the conversation that you had, but my understanding was, if we could reach out to everyone within that half mile and gather sentiment, then we could.
What?
I never saw the sentiment either, but I
Well,
just saw the list of 5 that couldn't get.
yeah, so I think that's maybe where some of this narrative of for or against has come from, because we were trying to summarize sentiment. And again, it went back to, was there a concern we thought could or could not be addressed by our thoughtful design, by the way we would engineer and, you know, put inverters interior to the project to minimize noise. Look at what height we would need to have the panels. So I think, just in summary, I think we've tried to be continuously communicative, but also exploratory behind the scenes of what we can do to try and comply and when we can't comply. And so from a timeline perspective, we've been doing all of that for many years, and to get this project in service in 2028 to serve our customers the energy when they need it the most. The IUC process was always going to be around this time.
I feel like they should have told me then at the very beginning, we can't comply with any of this, so.
Do
Then
you-
we would have had somewhere to work with, but
Do you have any building permits or anything yet? For the
No.
project? You haven't acquired any permits or anything?
Mm-mm. We've not. Again, I'm not sure what that process would look like. My understanding, we'd have to, you know, apply under the currently existing ordinance, be in front of the Board of Adjustment.
Yeah.
There's notification period, kind of that.
Yeah, I
whole
just wanted to make
process.
sure you hadn't gone to like the zoning board or you said you reached the JD, but you haven't talked to the
Early.
zoning board or anything like.
Yep,
Okay.
that's correct.
Correct. All right. Yeah, I feel like if it's such a long project and now we're just now getting to where we feel like we're rushed. That it's, there's things that obviously. This has been done, this ordinance was done in 2024. I believe,
December.
December of 2024.
Mhm.
So
I think all three
It's
readings were.
almost,
Yep,
yeah.
or
We
was-
we waived the third, we had two readings on it, waived the third. So it's been out there, it's not like we just put it out yesterday.
Sure.
So there's been lots of ability for people to look at it, to come to the board and say, I have had conversations with John Huff and I know that the setbacks were an issue. That was the only real thing that we've ever really talked about as far as issues on this. And now I just got this that he had given Judy in August of 25, it looks like. And so there is a lot of,
lines.
Mm-hmm.
It was at the red lines.
yeah, the red lines, yep. So that was something that was just presented. So if we're gonna change, I don't feel good about waiving anything. I think that sets a bad precedent. I think if we're going to change stuff, we would want to do it the right way. Doing amendments, doing public hearings. I know that doesn't fit your timeline, but I think that's the proper way to do it, and that's what I would recommend.
What about the agreement that Kelsey presented? Is there anything in there? Have you guys read it? Is there anything you can go along with?
Well, that would all be amendments to our ordinance. Not gonna waive anything to say, here, there's a magic wand, you can just do this, and then I feel like that opens us up to anybody else that doesn't like any of the rules, and we have to they say, hey, how come you didn't grant us a waiver? We'd like a waiver, and now we're gonna sue you because you didn't give us a waiver. So I think it needs to be done properly. I think it needs to be publicly, so the public has a chance to weigh in on anything that we change or update. So that's where I stand.
So I think the agreement, and part of the reason we're here talking about that now, it does recognize that we have a project that's in front of the Iowa Utilities Commission. And
Okay.
so, to me, because we have done that and we're at a point now where the three of us could be parties to that, that's why this agreement could become relative now. So I don't think that, anyone else that wants a waiver of anything would have that same process in front of them, if you will. And so again, it costs the county time and money to be involved in the IUC process. I see this as something that could minimize those two things, get us to a place where the county does have a say. They are able to say, maybe 300 foot isn't the number we want. And if we can get, to 400 or 500 or something, I'm not committing to any of that. But to me, this is the avenue to do it. And we can do it now because of the IUC process. And so you'll see that in some of the first parts of that agreement. So I do believe it's unique to solar. It could be unique to this project or not, but I don't think, in my view, it wouldn't be the same case if someone wanted a waiver for some other non-utility thing.
Well, I disagree because I think people would use that as, I know we can't look into the future and say it's not gonna be, but I do think it would be out there and then there's people, and it may impact other counties as well with ordinances. And I don't know that we want to be the county to set that precedent.
So I think John had sent the Sac County example. I don't remember who that went to, but around the time that we filed this, he had had a conversation with someone about our process in Sac County. And so we had a 50 megawatt solar project proposed there around the same time as we started working on this one in 2020, and had kind of the same thing happen up there in that we did not have an approved permit under their solar ordinance when we filed with the Utilities Commission. And we did enter into a similar agreement with them to the one that's in front of you. So in terms of being, the first county to do that, I don't see this being that, because we had a project, and I'm not even familiar with what other projects may have that.
I guess I'm not clear on this because you filed with the IUC. We have an ordinance you can't work with. This agreement overrides that ordinance because you filed with the IUC.
That's my understanding is
Okay.
it gives us, I guess, a platform, if you will, where there would otherwise be a dispute to come to an agreement on how we would want to work together outside of the ordinance, but within, the parameters of that agreement.
For this project only?
It would be for this project only. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I don't think we're going to come to a resolution today.
Thank you all.
So I think we'll move on to I want to thank everybody who spoke today. A lot of information has been disseminated to us and a lot to cover. So I think we'll have our county attorney and when we move on to our next thing going into closed session, we will be leaving the room for a little bit.
Jim Barley, the Page County Attorney. As the board is aware, last week I recommended that the Board of Supervisors have a closed meeting under Iowa Code Section 21.5, Sub 1, Sub C, to discuss the possibility of engaging the law firm of Ehlers and Cooney to provide advice to the board and possibly representation at the Iowa Utilities Commission concerning the commercial solar project being contemplated by MidAmerican Energy. After the agenda for today's meeting was completed and published, I discovered an advisory opinion from the Iowa Public Information Board that is opinion 15, capital A, capital O, semicolon 0010, designation of legal counsel for purposes of closed session, that recommends that prior to closing a public meeting under Iowa Code Section 21.5, Sub 1, Sub C, the board needs to clearly designate legal counsel for purposes of the closed session. To be clear, I have been in contact with Timothy Whipple, an attorney for Ehlers and Cooney, who specializes in utility law. Prior to today's meeting and based upon our conversations, Mr. Whipple has provided me an engagement letter that, if approved and signed by the Board of Supervisors, would retain Ehlers and Cooney as the county's law firm regarding the proposed solar project and representation if Page County intervenes in the MidAmerican application before the Iowa Utilities Commission. Mr. Whipple cannot participate in today's closed meeting, but I will be relying on what he told me, as well as providing my own advice as the Page County attorney to the Board of Supervisors. So I would request that the Board of Supervisors designate me as the county's legal counsel for purposes of the closed session that you're about to vote on.
Could we have a motion to designate what?
I'll make a motion.
Huh? Was that an echo?
I'll make a motion that Jim Farley is our designated legal advisor.
Legal authority.
Legal authority for the closed session.
Okay. I have a second for that. I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. So that being heard, we will I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session. And if you,
I'll make a motion that we go into closed section per Iowa Code, section 21.5 1C.
on the possible engagement.
The possible engagement of the law firm Baylor's and Cooney to give advice to and representation of the county in connection with matters related to the Iowa Utilities Commission and docket number GCU 2026-0006.
Okay, is there a second? I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
So we will be going into closed session. Stepping out a little bit. Okay, I would entertain a motion. Oops.
You got to come out of closed
I
session.
would entertain a motion to come out of closed session.
Motion to come out of closed session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. I would entertain a motion to decide whether to engage the law firm of Ehlers and Cooney with Timothy Whipple as the attorney.
Make a motion that we sign an engagement letter with Ehlers and Cooney to intervene in the IUC docket.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay. All right. Our next item is board communication.
I've got a SWPCO meeting Thursday.
Okay, I have a wellness meeting tomorrow.
Oh, and what do you guys think of the pictures of the veterans building?
That looks great.
Great, a lot better.
Yes. I like it,
Looks like
and it
it.
goes really well with their sign.
Yeah, looked really nice. I
For
thought.
those of you that don't know, our veterans building in Shenandoah got a new coat of paint. It looked pretty bad. It was an old yellowish color and it's now a nice blue and it matches the sign that they have on the walls. So, anyway, that's good. That's it for, let's see. Seemed like there was something else for board communication. I guess not. Okay.
What about the?
Oh, do we
No,
want
the
to,
meeting next week, yes. Do you want to go to that meeting next week?
you want to move ours to 3?
We want to, yeah, we could.
Move ours up to
Would that-
3. Do you think that gives us enough time? I don't know what. be on
I
the
don't know what
agenda
we're gonna
next
be on.
week
We
either,
can limit the agenda.
But
Yeah.
I do
So that we
think,
can, this meeting is at 5:30 at the Red Oak High School Auditorium. So if we had it at 3, that would be plenty of time.
3:10 would be the earliest I could get here.
Okay,
so, yeah,
3:10,
sure, or
okay. Or we could,
3:15.
or we could do the first.
3:15.
3:15 would be better. How would that be?
That's fine, 3:15.
3:15 next week.
Okay. So everybody, the meeting will be at 3:15 next week. This is a change so we can attend another meeting. And we're going to be having a lot of changes to meetings in the future we have some upcoming elections and different things, so we will be putting out a different schedule that Kristen has for that, so you guys have seen those,
Yes,
okay?
appreciate you for doing that.
Which one's the date of the meeting?
28th. 28th, Tuesday, the 28th at 3:15.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, meeting minutes from the 14th of July. Approval,
Motion to approve the minutes as stated.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. And our next number 15 is,
Motion adjourned.
okay,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
6:21.